Okay, I'm back. As a miracle did not happen in the past, how long was it? 3-ish minutes. Okay, so we're gonna start off with Seven Soldiers of Victory. Back in 2004, there was this person named Grant Morrison, and they were weird. Yeah, to sum up Grant Morrison, wow. I'm not gonna start. They're a non-binary wizard who takes drugs and writes comics. Also likes music. Um, so yeah, they're one of my favorite comic book writers ever. Their entire thing was just them, and every single comic they've ever written felt genuine and just weird enough to be interesting. And sometimes the weirdness would go in the weirdest of directions, but it was always fun. It was always entertaining. It was always an imaginative kind of weird, and never just like a weird for weirdness' sake. And you could tell that every time they wrote, they loved comics. And now they've written some prolific stuff. They've written some of the best ever Batman stories, from Batman R.I.P. They wrote Doom Patrol, both the series and the comic book. They wrote what was it called? Flex Mentallo, International Man of Muscle Mystery, and that comic helped me so much overcome so much what I was dealing with at the time. And well, that's we can talk about that if I don't have anything else to talk about. But I kind of want to focus on one specific thing. In 2004, they wrote Seven Soldiers of Victory, one of the most ambitious sets of comics I think I've ever read. The premise was that it was a bunch of C, Z, and one B list character all trying to save the world. And you know what? You're thinking, well, you know what? That's been done 1,000 times before. Like, hey, let's give the characters that we can kill off, that we can have permanent status quo changes made, like the spotlight, because that will give us the most emotional range, as opposed to like a Batman or Superman who you really can't do. Like Batman and Superman are always, and Wonder Woman are always going to go back to set status quos, like at the end of the day. But for them, for those people, for like minor characters, you can do a lot more with. So Grant decided, it's not hard enough to do with characters that nobody knows. We're gonna do it with characters that nobody knows that will never run into each other, and we're gonna do 4 issues for each one, and we're gonna make it super compelling. Yeah, like they did not choose the easy way out. So we're gonna start with, I guess the opening is so good. It's so not only do they introduce you to 7 characters. I'm gonna run it down. Zatanna, backwards talking wizard, lady magician that performs stage magic, um, and then we have the Guardian, former cop who signed up to be a daredevil reporter for a newly minted New York newspaper. Um, then we have what was the first? Shiny Knight, who's supposed to be this proto Arthurian knight from back in the day that gets samurai jacked into the modern day. Clarion the Witch Boy, which if you've God, is he obscure? Is he obscure enough for me to actually have to explain? Probably. He's a witch boy from 1600s who has magical powers. He messes with Etrigan the Demon a lot. Mr. Miracle, not the one you're thinking of. If you or even know who Mr. Miracle is, it's Shiloh Norman, Scott Free's assistant, the world's greatest escape artist. Um, we're almost done. Bulleteer, a lady who was married to a scientist who got super obsessed with superhero porn and decided to become a superhero himself to screw super heroines that were into him. But that fell over, and now she's stuck with super metallic skin and Frankenstein. Just straight up Frankenstein. Oh, God. Okay. That premise aside, we're not introduced to them first. We're introduced to them, like, at the start of each of their own series. What we start off with is 6 more completely inconspicuous, no-name characters that Grant invented for this run. Uh, their entire point is to die, but you actually do get sort of invested in them. I'm not gonna go run through all of them like I would right here, but it's a super interesting little story about old West superheroes and modern day cowboys dying to like fucking forces beyond like comprehension. That you just, and it's a great way to start off a story. Just And I know, like, you're thinking, like, contradictory, like, that's a terrible way to start up a story. Killing off, like, characters you've been introduced to just to set up the stakes. But trust me, it works. You get invested with a little time that you actually know them. But it's a super interesting way to start it off. So each one of these, the 7 stories, let's start off with Shining Knight, because that's the one that Grant Morrison themselves started off with. And it starts off with Shining Knight in Proto-Arthurian times. And okay, so let me actually sum up the villains, though. The villains are these things called the Sheeta, and they're made to resemble elves. Like, that's straight up. They're made to resemble fairies, and that's kind of the how do I say it? Not the gimmick. There's a word for this. The aesthetic we're going with. Like fairies, and they're trying to take over the world. They're trying to invade and screw over us. And Shining Knight is the starting point for that. That Shining Knight comes from Proto-Arthurian times. Like, when I say that, I mean, like, it's not like what we think of, like, oh, it's the 1300s. No, this is like 40,000 BC, and like there were like civilizations before us. It's one of those stories. And let me look it up. So the story starts out like that. I think the art is done by Simone Bianchi. I'm gonna correct myself if that's not true later, but the art is spectacular. It's super. All of the stories, all of the series have their own like distinct look at art, except for Mr. Miracle, who has 2 artists. Why, I don't know. And honestly, it does hamper the story quality for that one a lot, but it's still a super interesting read. Okay, so Shining Knight starts off like that. I'm gonna sum them up real quick so I can get into like why I like them later. So like I said, they're samurai. They start off and like we introduce this magical world, like Camelot on the fall, and they get Samurai Jack through time after confronting Gloria Tenebrae. Like, we're gonna like take a lot from fairy tales throughout this entire series, and it starts off like that. It starts off with her fighting Shining Knight, and Shining Knight getting sent to modern day LA, or 2004's modern day LA. And the entire story is them like coming to terms with the fact that like they are part of now a dead civilization. They have to deal with that. They have to like start becoming the hero that 2004 LA needs, and try to save them against the Sheeta. Like, and we're introduced to this other guy named Don Vincenzo, the Undying Don, who's a mobster. Like, and it's one of the things I love most about this series. It's like, because Grant Morrison never for one moment pretends that superhero stuff does not exist in a superhero universe. Mobsters don't just have guys with guns. They have like air elementals and cyborg assassins at their beck and call, and it's super fun. But the entire thing that's the premise. That like Shining Knight is trying to save the modern day from Sheetas, like these supposedly alien like invaders from beyond stars that wrecked over Avalon. And that's kind of the thing with the Sheeta. They wreck a civilization once it's at its peak. Now, the thing I love about this story in particular is just how, like, the art's amazing. It adds so much to the style of everything. Like, how, like, hopeful Shining Knight is. They're said to have, like, pure of heart from the very beginning, and this is never called into question. It's just a constant. Like, and that's how the story progresses. And it's a very mean story. When I say mean, it's a very like simple. There is very little kind of complexity to it, but it's an amazing read, and it's something that everyone should like try to experience if you can. Like, it's not gonna get you into the entire thing in general. Like, you have to read everything for you to like really appreciate what's going on. I tell the story with, I think, the least amount of crossover to like every other story going on. None. Like, when you read it, you'll see some like billboards that'll come up through other people's stories. You'll see 2 characters that'll come in later, Ali Kazam and the FBI agent whose name I cannot remember. But essentially, it's just a simple story. It's when it gets to the Manhattan Guardian story that you actually start to see some weird stuff. Because that opens with freaking subway pirates. And it's the first time I ever got, like, I don't want to say weirded out, but just like, what am I reading when you have subway pirates? And it's sold so seriously, too. It's just subway pirates. Like these are men who believe that they're on the high seas, and they're subway pirates. They're selling it completely seriously. They believe everything they're saying, and it's so fun. It gets serious like legit right afterward. The subway pirates are have to be stopped by Jake Jordan. He's a former cop who put himself off the force after accidentally killing a kid, which, in modern day like situations, that's way less sympathetic. And honestly, if they were gonna redo it, you might want to change that origin to something else. But it does make for a compelling main character, kinda, just because you see how much he regrets it. It's an interesting little like read into that. Now, as it goes on, like he has to like, and once again, one thing I love about Grant Morrison is that they keep making sure that like no, time has passed on since superheroing started. Things are weird now. You don't get any more just invaders. Like you have golems walking around for criminals to use. It's fun, and as it goes on, like yeah, the first adventure is Subway Pirates, but unlike for other heroes, Jake Jordan doesn't get the courtesy of like, oh, things work out well for me. In his first adventure, his girlfriend's dad dies because like that's what happens to people when stuff like this happens. No one gets out clean, and you can see the toll it takes on him. His relationships disintegrate as the story goes on, and as much fun as being the Manhattan Guardian would be, like that weighs on him. It's the stuff of like Spider-Man happening. Like Spider-Man was always defined by that little bit of like, oh no, like things like affect me as my life goes on. Superheroing gets in the way, and even when it doesn't get in the way, stuff goes on. And yes, Simone Bianchi was the artist for Shining Knight. Once again, sorry, I just had to correct myself real quick there. Um, the art for the Manhattan Guardian was done by Cameron Stewart, so if you want to look it up, it's super cool. So yeah, and the story culminates with him finding out who actually hired him, because like throughout the story, the Manhattan Guardian, the newspaper he works for, is dealt as like this kind of like omnipresent force for good, where the readers are the reporters. I have no idea how this newspaper is supposed to work, but there you go. The readers are the reporters, and that's kind of what you're getting here. And it's like, I know it's silly, and it's supposed to tie into this thing that Jack Kirby created called the Newsboy Legion, where it's a bunch of these like 12-year-olds who are supposed to like be newsies. Like they're 1950s newspaper boys or 1930s. When did newspaper boys exist? Anyone who's listening to me right now? Yeah, and it was just supposed to be a fun little thing that Jack Kirby invented that he's calling back to, or they're calling back to. I'm sorry. So yeah, as it goes on, we get the final issue titled, and please don't be grossed out by this. I mean, last time I was on here, I talked about Green Lantern's relationship with a 14-year-old alien, so this is not par for the course. It was called The Sex Secrets of the Newsboy Legion. Please don't turn off right now. God, Grant, why are you so weird? And that is just their backstory. And it's this little weird story about these group of teenage adventurers as they dealt with like growing up from becoming these 14-year-old like adventurers who would have like absurd cartoony adventures. Like imagine if the cartoon adventures that you watched, like what would be a good one? Bucky O'Hare, Dora the Explorer, that kind of thing, turned out to like just be an alcoholic later in life. That's the stuff we're dealing with here. And it's a super interesting little read in how it's going on. And now you might be wondering, how does this connect to Shining Knight? Because all of these are supposed to be interconnected. And my answer is like the Sheeta are coming. That's the answer. The Sheeta connect everything and everyone. Although I'd have to say that only like Mr. Miracle will be less connected than the Shining Knight. All that like happens to connect him to the Sheeta is that his boss, like one of the newspaper boys, I think his name is called Big Brain Baby or something like that. He's a toddler who grows into old age but never grows out of being a toddler because he's super smart. Why are you so weird, Grant? And like the entire thing is like that they ran into a time tailor back in the day, and a time tailor is supposed to be like the enemy of the Sheeta, but this tailor went rogue and messed up their lives. So that's why he's like a weird recluse. That's why some of his companions died at 14. That's why one of them turned into a pedophile, which that's horrible. And that's why one of them became a guilt-ridden mass murderer. Hey, it's Don Van show that we saw last issue. Okay, back over Shiny Knight. It's honestly one of the most out there fun part of it, but like that's for another day. All right. Next we got Zatanna, and the art is done by Ryan Sook. It's super good as well. Although, well, the first one by Simone Biaggi was more. It felt more grimy for like the era we're going with. We're supposed to juxtapose Shiny Knight against like a person from like Arthurian times, you know, like morality, high principles, and all that kind of stuff. And that's gonna juxtapose against like the griminess of modern day America or whatever that was in 2004. Same for what was their name? Same for the artwork of the Manhattan Guardian by Cameron Stewart. This is supposed to be someone set in the modern day, and it's supposed to be way more out there than usual. So the artwork reflects that. It's more realistic. No one seems out of place. For Zatanna's art by Ryan Sook, it's that same kind of thing, but it's more introspective, if that makes any sense. The colors aren't more bombastic, but the artwork and the line work is more reserved, as opposed to the other ones. And Zatanna's story, once again, this is one thing I will say. Good writers make stories out of nothing. Great writers make great stories out of bad stories. What I mean by that is, like, there was this thing that was happening in Justice League at the time, where Zatanna was mind-wiping heroes and Dr. Light to be less of a threat, and they were dealing with the ethics of mind-wiping someone so you can control their behavior. It was a really bad story, really kind of character assassinated a lot of characters from Zatanna to the rest of the League and Dr. Light as in general, which that also came out of a really weird story called Identity Crisis that I do not want to talk about right now, because if I get into it, I'm going to talk for another hour. But more to the point, Zatanna's kind of dealing with the repercussions of that, of being a superhero after she's kind of lost that luster and dealing with the fact that her dad was dead back in the day. And throughout the entire thing, she's racing this little girl who came to her to teach her magic, called Misty Kilgore, which that name's amazing. And I'm going to spoil this right now, because if anyone's listening, like, they're either already interested or have clicked off. Misty Kilgore is the Sheeta princess, like the Sheeta Hava queen, Gloria Trevenay. We met her when Shiny Knight fought her, and Misty Kilgore is her daughter, although she looks far more human than Gloria Tenebrae. Gloria Tenebrae looks like a weird green-skinned lady. Misty just looks like a gothy 13-year-old girl. So the premise of the story is just that Zatanna kind of like trying to get over her own issues after accidentally killing 7 people, trying to find her dad's old books. And she's now got to train Misty in the mystic arts, just because that's what heroes do. But that's not the reason she gives, but it's like Misty asked for it, so why not? Why not help out this little kid? And their story has way more to deal with introspection. Like, it's far less just like superhero action mixed with some melancholy, and far more like her dealing with her issues. And we do get some weird stuff. We get what the first one was, this homunculi that was completely the letter G, like that just followed them across America, to this old Silver Age villain called the Tempter, whose entire thing was just tempting people. Although once Puritan times ended, that became way harder. And the last issue is her fighting Zor, the time tailor that the Newsboy Legion ran into the last issue. And Zor is this weird-ass Zatara looking dude who isn't, and they have the art, while being more introspective, is still mind-bending. So you get them actively seeing themselves on different panels. Like, Zatanna like calls out like, "Oh, there we are over there," and like it's super weird, but it's also super cool. it occurs to me right now that talking about comic books on radio is a horrible premise because I can't show you the art. Damn it. I'll fix that some other day. Okay. So not to keep going on Zatanna for a little bit, but that's kind of the premise so far, and it's like an amazing like little bit of story. Her reconciling that her dad did love her, and that his greatest achievement wasn't his work; it was her. Also, like she throws planets at Zor, so that's fun. Yeah. We run into Alakazam, so that's another thread tying in together, where he's this old schizophrenic magician that just he was also part of the Newsboy Legion. I can't believe I forgot to mention that he was part of the Newsboy Legion. So that's actually Alakazam is one of the more consistent threads tying everything together. The second most after the Sheeta. Okay, so that's gonna be it for right now. I'm gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna get into Clarion the Witch Boy. Oh, that one's weird. Okay. Okay, hi. Apparently we might have a guest right now. He might be coming up the stairs right this second. I'll introduce you when he gets here, and we'll catch you up with everything that's going on. So yeah, we actually have a guest this time. So that's gonna be fun. For the next, I don't know, 30 minutes. We'll see what happens. So yeah, Seven Soldiers of Victory. I'm gonna play another song because I need to buy time for him to get here. But we're gonna keep going. Who likes? Isn't censoring songs super weird? Like you know what they're saying. The lyrics are still there. Who knows? Okay, I'm back. I think. Yeah, that works. So unfortunately, we're not able to have a guest. My friend may not came in the clutch, but unfortunately, things got in the way. If you have time, go see Coriolanus. It's a play that he's worked super hard on. While he has a minor role, it's still going to be super fun. Coriolanus premieres mostly on Friday. There's a dress rehearsal tomorrow on, yeah, I guess Thursday tomorrow. It's going to be the Jeffers at 7:30. So if you want to come, please come. Bring snacks. Okay, so back to Seven Soldiers. Oh god, it's way harder than I guessed. Okay. Back to Seven Soldiers. The next hero we want to talk about is Clarion the Witch Boy. And Clarion has a history. I know more about them than a lot of the other characters. Second only to Mr. Miracle. Frankenstein, I guess. But yeah, so Clarion the Witch Boy was invented by Jack Kirby. Once again, the man invented everything. He was invented by Jack Kirby, and he was supposed to be this nemesis for the demon Etrigan when he worked on the demon. And so far, most people have just used him as this weirdo witch boy that comes in, causes havoc. Very rarely is he ever the antagonist of the story, and very rarely is he the protagonist of one either. This is one of the first and only times he's ever been a protagonist, and we're getting some weird time travel stuff here. So Clarion lives in the town of Roanoke, underground with a bunch of blue-skinned Puritans. And that's the opening. So yeah. So the entire town is this weird puritanical thing that lives in constant fear of the Sheeta and run by this, what are they? Like these practitioners, they're like these, imagine if like you had like prefects and like hall monitors but for light. And that's what these guys are. So I'm gonna call them practitioners because I have no idea what they're actually called. Like, practitioner Judas, like, runs the town, and Clarion is stuck there. He's a curious boy, and he wants to know what's outside the underground town of Roanoke. And so it's him messing around with his cat Teakle, and because he's a witch boy, like, he's got a Teakle's supposed to be a familiar. And it's supposed to be, like, kind of fun. It's just, like, this weird whimsical story about this kid, like, messing around until the second issue in which people are slaughtered, and there's a child slaver from their town called Ezekiel, who Clarion tricks into being eaten by this living sentient mass of 50 children that share one mind called Legion. And that's the B plot. The main plot of the story is he runs into this dude called Mr. Melmoth in our world, like the real world of New York 2004. And Mr. Melmoth is this blue-skinned dude who, as it turns out, is one of the Sheeta. He used to be the king until he got kicked out by Gloria. And his plan is to get the children of just get these runaway children to mine gold for him on Mars. Just to come back later, and yeah, it's a thing that happens. But once again, that's the B plot. The actual plan, and like the one that Clarion's concerned about is that Mr. Melmoth is gonna try to invade Roanoke Town, and that's all he's concerned about right now. So he goes back. He saves his family, who burned him for being a witch and escaping. But he defends the town. He kills the Black Ops dude sent there. Sets Mr. Melmoth on fire. He walks it off, and like that's his story. Way more complete than Satana's, which ends with her just like, oh no, the world's ending after I reconciled my differences with my father. No, that's a story arc. It's just that story ends with the world about to end. Manhattan Guardian does not have an ending. It's just him finding out, oh, my boss is a weird baby man who had like a really weird childhood. And Shining Knights ends with them managing to sneak their way onto Gloria Trepanay's time traveling castle and about to kill her. Oh, fuck. BT Dubs, the ending is actually Shining Knight being revealed to be a girl. And that's it doesn't really do much except that it makes her a girl. What was the purpose of that really? I'm actively debating it. It has a purpose. Oh yeah, it's supposed to play out the Snow White myth, which like Gloria Trepanay is supposed to like be like the origin story for. Like she constantly asks a mirror who's the fairest of them all, and like Shining Knight, while she looks like a boy through almost the entire thing, how do you think a boy would look? Like they're definitely coded male until that point, at which point the reveal happens. And it's a fun little reveal because it plays out the Snow White thing, except this time Snow White's a knight called Justin. The original Shining Knight, who was from the 1300s originally, that Gardner Fox came up with, was like just the typical person you think of. But Grant Morrison's version was this person from like ancient English times, so the language is a lot more weird, and it's what Old English would have sounded like. So you get a lot of Y's, double L's, that kind of stuff, so the name's distant. Okay, back on topic. I swear to God, we're almost done with this. Next up is, I think, my favorite character out of this, which is saying a lot because I love weird comic book stuff, and you can't get weirder than what we've just talked about. It's honestly one of the tamer things. We've got Mr. Miracle, Shiloh Norman. And so the earliest we've seen of Shiloh is this one radio broadcast in Manhattan Guardian's book where it's just like, and Shiloh Norman's going to attempt an escape from Black Hole X, from the mouth of science itself, folks. He is the eighth wonder of the world, the 21st century Houdini. Come here tonight. And it's a super fun little extra. And like you're thinking, oh, that's fun. I know we're gonna see him later, but we'll see what it's about. And you're thinking like, oh, super escape artist. That sounds fun. No. It's not fun. How dare you think it's fun? God. Okay, so Mr. Miracle's entire story arc is dealing with his place in life. Like everyone's felt useless. Everyone's felt lifeless. Everyone's felt like what they do doesn't matter, and that affects everyone. However rich you are, however able-bodied you are, how many opportunities you have, eventually you're gonna feel unfulfilled. That's kind of just what you do. Thing is, and if that was the story, then it's interesting, but like not what you need a superior story for. But you know what? The wrong person. That would be enough. That messes people up on its own. Except when you get here and Shiloh's this poor man. By the way, iCarly's being shown in the background. I have no idea what to mention with this. It's been on for the last 45 minutes. I don't know what to do with that. Okay, so back on topic. Shiloh Norman has to deal with the gods of apocalypse. He falls into the black hole, meets Metron, who's this weird dude in a skin tight suit, who knows everything, and he tells him that this is his first introduction to the mysteries of the new gods, and that there was a war in heaven, and the bad side won, the dark side won. It's clever because dark side is the leader against apocalypse. It's a fun thing. The new gods. Okay, so yeah, and Shiloh returns home. He survives a black hole, and he comes back, and he's a bit depressed. He just doesn't know what to do with life. And I'm sorry, it's the episode where Carly gets a girlfriend who's this bad boy when it comes to meetings, and Spencer just walked in pretending to be a janitor. Do you guys want an iCarly podcast where we just review episodes? I don't know. Back to the main story. So Shiloh deals with that, and and it's super, actually kind of, it's enough to make you feel sympathetic about this super escape artist dude. This is where the art gets a bit more subjective. When I say that, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just the art loses a lot of focus because it switches artists midway through. The first issue is pretty consistent, but it's still not the most. It's still not the cleanest thing for what they were going for. I'll get to it when I get to it, but now he finds that the people in his life have been replaced and abducted by the new gods, the gods of apocalypse. And instead of it being and he's besieged on all sides from him. He's dealing with that, and his therapist is giving him good advice that turns out to be bad advice because it just isolates him from his friends. And he can't build any more connections because his friends are also being attacked, and I don't want to say half seduced, half manipulated by these gods. They're turned into drug addicts. They're mind control, chloroform, and I guess Ray. I'm not gonna go that far. But yeah, so that's what he's dealing with. His life is systemically destroyed. The first issue is just him meeting these. His friend takes him to a strip club, but the women turn out to be demons. The second issue, he runs into these homeless people who turn out to be the old new guys, the good new guys. Highfather, Orion, but they're all homeless now. They're being chased by Darkseid, who's now this mob boss. But instead of the other ones where in Shinenet, where the mob boss is just a fun little thing, no, there's actively something sinister in them. It's not oh, this is comic book fun. No, this is sinister, demonic, and that's what you have to deal with and fight against. And so the second issue starts out with him being chased by cars in a drive-by derby set off by the black racer who, once again, so the good gods are all homeless people, drug addicts, etc. And they're been being hunted by Darkseid for fun. So Metron's kind of this disabled man in a wheelchair, and the black racer is just an older man in a wheelchair. And they're playing chess with Shadow's life. And it's a super fascinating read until the end of the issue and the final kind of boss reveal. Darkseid's revealed for the first time in full panel. He's a big dude, and behind him is Dr. Bedlam, renamed Baron Bedlam for this issue. Baron Bedlam was the most recurring villain in the original Mr. Miracle run back in the 1970s. Once again, another creator created by Jack Kirby. And Shiloh first appeared there as Mr. Miracle's prototype, Scott Friesberg. And he's the world's greatest escape artist, I guess in human form. The platonic ideal of freedom. So this is where we actually get into racial politics here. So Baron Bedlam is drawn to be this plastic dude. He is a hollow man. He is described so as such. Beat weaponizes hate. And just to go on a side little tangent here, Seven Soldiers is actually a super diverse book. Racially, most of the time in modern comic book parlances, it's mostly white guys. And that kind of sucks. I know why, because in the 1930s and everyone was super racist back then. And what we still do live in a white supremacist society. But the cast for this book is super diverse. Lots of people, well, it's mostly black people. I'm not going to get into it, but it's way more diverse than your average superhero book. And while that's not the focus of everything, it does, I don't know, it's just better than just having everyone be white people. Because, well, life isn't just white people. Side tangent aside, it actually does come into play in this book because, well, like I said, Shiloh is black. He's a black Jewish man, and like everything about him that could have been said to be like unmarketable, to be like unproductable, is taken away in Baron Bedlam. He looks exactly the same. He's just a reverse color scheme. And Baron Bedlam's supposed to be this hollow man. He's made of plastic, quite literally, and that's how he becomes a better escape artist than Shadow, because he's cheating. He's not actually an escape artist. He's a disposable tool for the new gods to fuck with Shadow. And while now that's the setup. And the subversion here is that Shadow can't win. The forces are too great. It's the worst, most depressing thing. And he's beaten down and like burned alive, like castrated, like drilled into. He's a wreck at the end of the third issue. And there's no way out for him. He can't beat them. And then the fourth issue comes, and it's honestly a little disappointing because of how little comes into it. Like Shadow can't win. He just can't. So the new guys, the good ones, the Orion, Metron, they think of a way around it. So it's not a battle for Shadow's life. That's lost. It's a battle for his soul now. And he's trapped in the Omega Sanction by Darkseid. Every life is going to be worse than the last one, onward from there. And he experiences like thousands of these at a time, constantly living and dying, each more degraded existence than the last, until he can finally convince Omega to let him go. That he gave his life over to freedom, and he has a responsibility to do that. And freedom can free everyone. That is the stupidest thing I've ever said. But that's the premise. It's like eventually being yourself, being like happy with yourself, living your better life frees you, and it frees people around you. So yeah, so that was their plan. Shadow commits suicide, which the optics of are horrible. Like, it is a weird ass little story. He takes pills. He lives 1,000 lives that he's like said to live. He's a prison guard. He's a superhero. He's just an escape artist. He's a baby. He's an old man. But as time goes on, he frees himself. And it's revealed that while it did happen, he is sent back in time into that black hole. He frees himself, and like the scientists even say, "Welcome back, Mr. Miracle." It's a super interesting read, and I think Grant was trying to say something about racial politics. Was a reference to slavery, because he can't win, but people like in modern times can win. They can let go like the shackles around them. They can free themselves. You can. Grant's always been a leftist person. He's never been like someone that was leaning towards the conservative side of things. So black radical politics could be something he's trying to clue into here. I don't know. I don't know the person like myself, so I can only guess what he's trying to do. No one has really ever talked about this part of it, so who knows? So I've only got like 7 minutes left, so I'm gonna speed through these other two. One of them is unfortunately super complex. Frankenstein is not complex. I'll get through that first. He's Frankenstein. It's like it's a super like heavy rock album, heavy metal rock anthem like of a comic book. Frankenstein kills incel Dr. Octopus, who can read people's thoughts. He kills Mr. Medicor. That is not his name. Mr. Melthor feeds him to like man-eating horses on Mars. Kills water. I didn't even know you could do that. And finally kills the Nebula Man, a man made of sentient galaxy and who works for the Sheeta the entire time. Oh, by the way, there's a reason I didn't mention the Sheeta throughout all of Mr. Miracle's section. That's because the Sheeta don't come in once. He's the most disconnected. Yeah. Frankenstein kills the Sheeta. It turns out the Sheeta are actually time travelers, and that sucks. But it's a super interesting gimmick. They're us from 1 billion years, and the only way to survive is by like destroying past civilizations and stealing from them like their products. It's essentially like this giant metaphor for colonialism. This is how England did stuff. This is how America got to the point it is. Colonialism of like other civilizations, and that eventually led to like, if you want to know why a lot of racial minorities are in the situation they are, that's why colonization, not the best thing. That's how ooh, I'm not gonna go into that, but that's how black people have in the situation they are. That's how black Mexicans have in the situation they are. It's not fun. Okay, back to the actual point. The last one we're gonna talk about is Bulletier. This one's like, well, Mr. Miracle is like despairing. Like this one's just depressing. So, um, what is her name? I don't want to say it's not important because that is a horrible thing to say. Just give me a second. Alex Harrower. I think is that her name? Her name is something silly. Her name is let's say her name is Alex Harrower. I think that's her actual name. And her entire thing is that she was married to this scientist who was working on this skin grafting thing, but her husband is a porn addict who has this fetish for teenage supergirls. And once again, this is Grant. We're gonna get into a lot of stuff like this in this issue. Luckily, I'm only gonna talk for about 4 more minutes, so who knows what happens there. Yeah, but once again, Grant is not afraid to show you that this is a lived-in world, and this is something that would pop up, especially the extreme that it goes to. So he ends up dying because of his experiments, and he ruins her life because now she has super metallic skin, but she's a teacher for special ed kids, so they're not exactly reacting well to this. She can't continue to work, so her only option left is to become a superhero. And you're thinking, oh, okay, that's tragedy to superheroism. That usually happens. But not this time. This time it's weird, and this time it's just not the best thing. She has to deal with the seedy underbelly of it. So the first issue is just her dealing with the fact that things went wrong the first time, and like, how do I say this properly? That things went wrong the first time, and like the Seven Soldiers at the beginning, like that was supposed to be her team, but she flicked out at the last second, so she couldn't do anything there. And as it continues, like, she just deals with like, she finds out that I am at a loss for how to say stuff like this. Okay, so there's not really much. You'd have to get into a lot to get into that second issue. It's the culmination of that first little story that I didn't really talk about much. We find the same lady from this, the FBI agent from Shining Knight come in. She's there. She dies immediately to stop her sis from marrying a dude who turned out to be a werewolf. Oh yeah, so to go into it would take too much time. Let's just say there's a dude who used to be a supervillain. He thought his mortal enemy was racist. Turned out he was just a werewolf. And he sent his grandson to infiltrate the team was put together. Some benevolent man to kill them all. And well, that ended up happening. So Iron Hand, I think that's his name, ended up doing the role. Sucks. Don't be racist, guys. Your mortal enemy will do the role. He wasn't actually racist. The vigilante wasn't actually racist. He was once again a werewolf. This is superhero comics, folks. You know what you're getting into. So last two issues. So it's kind of an opportunity to joke that Booster Gold is the worst superhero because he's just a glory hunter for fame. But he is not rare in this universe, and Grant does not make him rare. There's an entire subsystem of superheroes who are just begging to break out, and it's a lot like the porn industry and the acting industry, where a lot of people are have massive issues here, drug issues, heroin issues. A lot of soliciting for sex, and they can't say no because they have the power. And that's what we're dealing with third issue. Last issue is a really dark diatribe into this girl into the porn industry. This girl who used to be just like this teenager, thought like it was gonna be fun because she's a superhero. Turned out like by like the systemic forces around her is made poor. They don't believe she's an adult, and like she is like groomed by this fucking dude who's supposed to be a superhero called Bioman. I don't know if he existed beforehand or Grant ruined something, but let's say they did, and he grooms her into just being a sex toy for him. This is how women get into the porn industry a lot of times. It's a really skeevy system, and she has to like fight against it. What Frank was trying to say here, other than like the ideal life around you might not be so ideal, is she's just dealing with a seedy underbelly. It's horrible. Oh god, I made it through. Okay, so the end is just all of them coming together, beating the Sheeta. This dude called I Spider, who's supposed to be this dickhead, like the bait is laid. I truly am the man. That kind of guy. Like he's wearing a flaming shirt, people. You know what I'm talking about. He turns like he's the one that originally started out the book, like drafted by the Time Tailors to like mess with the Sheeta to stop them. He does so, and the soldiers all play their little part. Shiny Knight kills Lloyd at Durbanay. Uh, Manhattan Guardian saves Manhattan. Zatanna puts everything into motion. Um, Freaking Clarion doesn't actually do much. He steals the castle revolving, the time traveling castle in the sky. That's fun. Uh, Mr. Miracle frees a rogue demigod in his book, and he dies. Sucks for him. He's dead it twice now. Bullets here. Alex, she ends up being the weapon that kills Gloria Trevenay. And Frankenstein just essentially starts off the war against Sheeta. So they all play their part. Mr. Miracle comes back to life at the end of the book. It's super fun. I really want to do an actual video on this, deep dive into it, but I really only have an hour right now, and it works best with someone else playing off me. But that was Seven Soldiers of Victory. Did you like it? I got no idea. No one's here to give me feedback right now. Well, yeah, this was DJ Watcher. This is just me geeking out about Seven Soldiers of Victory. The art's super cool. I realized I stopped talking about who the artists were halfway through. God, this is so messy. Okay, but yeah, that was the book. Was it weird? Did you like it? Do you want to ask Grant what he was doing? Well, you can't. Maybe you can. I don't know. See you next time where we hopefully have a guest. Thank you so